For the first question, I know that I read in the notes that it is an altered state of consciousness. But sleep is unconscious. You're still unconscious. You're
Not unconscious.
You're not control. I mean, it's...
So he had an interesting point. He said, okay, so we read in the notes that, you know, it's an altered state of consciousness, but like that's not consciousness. Is that what you were saying? It's something else. Well, let's take a look at what consciousness is. So today we're going to talk about sleep. The next class we're going to talk about hypnotism. The class after that we're going to talk about drugs. And all of these involve alterations of consciousness, an altered state of consciousness. So if we want to talk about what sleep is and answer your question definitively, we need to answer like what consciousness is. So what is consciousness? If you are conscious, what does that mean? It means you are awake? Aware, yes. It doesn't mean that you're awake. It means that you're aware. So consciousness has to do with awareness. What type of awareness? What are you aware of if you're conscious?
Thoughts and feelings.
You're aware of your thoughts and feelings. You're aware of how you feel. You're aware of yourself. Oh, I'm hungry right now. Oh, I'm embarrassed. I'm standing in front of all of these students. Oh, you know, it's an awareness of ourselves. What else is it an awareness about? Not just ourselves, but of the environment. We're aware of the environment to some extent, right? There are bright lights on. A few students are chattering right now. Thank you for not talking during class. Right? We're aware not only of our own states, but of the surroundings as well. So an awareness is like an ability to feel our surroundings, an ability to feel ourselves, being aware of ourselves. So now I guess the big question is, what is unconsciousness? Because he said that sleep is unconsciousness. So let's define what unconsciousness is, and then let's talk about whether sleep is a better example of consciousness or unconsciousness. So what's unconsciousness? Lack of consciousness. Okay, unconsciousness is lack of consciousness. It's a very literal using Good, but what does that mean, lack of consciousness? If we don't use the word conscious in our definition of unconsciousness, what do we have?
Things that we cannot manage, we cannot control, we cannot understand.
Okay, I don't like necessarily the control, but the understand is on the right path. So things that we don't understand, what types of things can't we understand?
Things that are beyond our...
Yes? Things that are beyond our... If you say the right word, you're getting a high five. Things that are beyond our what? No? No? Yes! Awareness! Things beyond our awareness. If consciousness is awareness, unconsciousness is lack of awareness. Right? No awareness, in fact. So consciousness is an awareness, an ability to feel, a sense of self. Unconsciousness would be the opposite of this, not the above. Unawareness. So the question now, in relationship to the quiz question, is sleep consciousness or unconsciousness? So some people said it's unconscious. You're unconscious when you're sleeping. So defend that argument. Why are you unconscious? I can defend that argument. I don't agree with it. I can make other arguments against it, but I can make an argument why someone might say that sleep is unconscious. Of what? When you're asleep, you're not aware of...
your environment.
Okay, so there's this claim. You're not aware of your environment when you're asleep. Does anyone have any evidence that might refute this argument?
I feel cold or hot.
When you're sleeping, you can feel cold or hot? So, actually last night, it was the first day of spring. Woohoo! Happy... Nevruz. I was going to say Nazar. Happy Nevruz. And I slept with my window open. my son, I don't know why, he likes sleeping on the floor in my bedroom. So he came and he was sleeping on the floor in my bedroom. And at like 4 in the morning, he got up and he was shivering. And I told him, go get another blanket. Why did he wake up? Well, because he was aware of his internal self. He was aware that he was cold, right? So he has some awareness. What other examples? Do any of you guys use alarm clocks to wake up in the morning?
Yes.
Do any of you guys have dreams where you hear the alarm clock?
Yes.
What does that suggest? It suggests that you are aware of your surroundings. There are games that you can play with people. Like when someone's asleep, if you have a slumber party and your friends come over, you take the first person that's asleep and then you tell them things while they're asleep. Like, okay, you're in a forest and the monster's chasing you. And then what do? They are aware. Now, they are certainly not aware to the same extent that you are when you're awake, right? But they are aware of the external world. If you were unaware of the external world, what would happen when your alarm went off? Or what would happen if your mother said, hello, Beza, wake up? Huh? No, you wouldn't wake up. If you were unaware, if you were unconscious, you'd have no idea that the alarm was going off or that your mother was saying wake up or anything, right? So you are aware when you're sleeping, but you're not as aware as you are when you are awake. So we call this an altered state of consciousness. So in which situation would you have someone who is unconscious? Yeah, did you have a question?
Fading away. Fading away.
What do you mean fading away?
Like when you get sick or something, when you fall, you got unconscious.
Yeah! So when someone falls and hits their head, or maybe they're in a fight and they get smacked and they fall unconscious, right? And they are unaware of what's going on. So you take someone who's been hit in the head and you tell them, wake up, wake up, wake up. They don't respond.
You hear me. In some points, in some levels, or you hear the voices around you when you are saying that you're becoming, you're responding in every
So if you are hearing those, then you're not completely unconscious. You would be in an altered state of consciousness, right? And lots of times after people pass out completely, as they respond, they gain more and more consciousness. They become more and more aware. But after something happens, they might say, huh? Where am I? Right? Demonstrating that they're not aware of where they are in their surroundings. There was one other thing I wanted to... Yes.
I think this is relative because if I compare myself with my mom, if I just walk just beside her bed, just a little bit, she knows it. But for me, even if it's very hot or very cold, I don't care. I can, for example, let's say that I'm in a place and this place is very hot, and then the AC turns off. Okay, and it was on when I was out, and it turns off, and everybody get out, and it's so hot. And for me, I can sleep. So I'm I can say that.
So you're maybe less conscious than some other people who are sleeping?
Yes.
Let me ask this other question. Do any of you have dreams when you sleep? Do any of you remember any of your dreams?
Yes.
How are you able to remember your dreams if you are unconscious? Right? By being unconscious, that would mean that you're completely unaware. So the only way that you could remember a dream is if you have some awareness. Right? People are aware that they're dreaming sometimes. I'm very aware of my dreams. My wife is less aware of her dreams. I can remember dreams almost every morning I wake up. My wife, not so much. But I'm aware, I'm not aware that I'm sleeping when I'm dreaming. Actually, sometimes I become aware that I'm sleeping when I'm dreaming. Have you guys experienced that? You're in a dream and you realize, oh,
Yeah, you want to
I'm in a dream.
You want to wake up, but
Yeah. So there's this awareness even when you're sleeping. Now, these questions are actually really, really good questions. Good philosophical questions. Good scientific questions. There's a huge debate in psychology and science and philosophy about what consciousness actually is. So when you say like this is sort of like, what did you say? This is sort of hazy or gray? You're absolutely right. There's been some people looking at individuals who are in a coma to see whether or not they are conscious at all, right? I mean, people say, okay, you're in a coma, you're unconscious. But yet when you look at their brain using particular techniques, people are making some types of responses indicating that they might have some little awareness. So it's possible that the only time you're truly unconscious and completely unaware is when you're dead. But for the terms of this class, the things we're going to talk about, sleep, hypnosis, drugs, we'll talk about an altered state of consciousness. Some awareness that we have that is different from the awareness we have when we're fully awake and not on any drugs and not hypnotized. Okay? Alright, so altered states. Well, great. So what are some altered states? I mentioned them already. Hypnosis is a type of altered state. You see these pictures on Facebook. It's interesting. So I used to teach in America, and now I'm teaching here. And the type of Facebook pictures that show up after a weekend from the students are very different. So in America, I would see a lot more pictures like this. Someone doing something stupid while they're drunk. Smoking weed, crack cocaine, crystal meth, altered states. Sleeping. Oh, thank you. Sleeping is also an altered state. Now, some altered states follow fairly regular patterns. That means there's like a cycle to them. So what cycle is there when we're talking about sleep? Actually, two. It's a circadian rhythm. What's the circadian rhythm?
Biological
Clock.
It's related to a biological clock. We have several biological clocks, but the circadian rhythm, if we take the name and break it down, does anyone know what circa means? Around, yeah. So circa is about, around, circle, something that goes about, around. And how about dia, or diem? The day. So a circadian rhythm is a rhythm that takes about a day. So we have this automatic rhythm that's about a day long. And what happens during this rhythm? In terms of consciousness and sleep.
helps to adapt. It's helped to adapt adaptation.
So the circadian rhythm absolutely can be very adaptive. But before we talk about how it can be adaptive, let's talk about what it is. So what does the circadian rhythm determine?
Your activity.
It determines to a great extent your activities, right? You wake up in the morning, you do your stuff, and as time goes on, you start to feel more and more tired. And then what happens? You go to bed. You sleep, you wake up, and you do this again, right? It's this circular type of pattern. It's this regular pattern. Now, you mentioned that this is adaptive. Why would having a circadian rhythm be adaptive? I mean, wouldn't it be great? I like to imagine that, I could stay awake 24 hours a day, every day, without getting tired. Imagine how much work I could get done. So why is sleeping adaptive? Why might it be adaptive?
Your body needs rest.
So our body needs rest. Okay, but why? We didn't have to, evolve or be made to need rest, right? We could just have evolved to be working machines.
For our brain.
So, but why? Why is it adaptive to need to rest? To be asleep at night?
You recharge your energy, basically.
So there's something, I'm trying to think of an example of an animal that doesn't recharge. Have this regular rhythm. And I don't know of any off the top of my head, but I would imagine worms. It's a worm. Does it need to like go to sleep at night?
Maybe, we don't know.
I don't know. I can ask a biologist to tell me, right? But there's no there's no, I guess, maybe reverse. I think there is a very good reason why we would want to be asleep at night. It's dark at night. And if we buy the theory of evolution, like falling asleep at night would give us some adaptive benefits. People that are asleep at night are more likely to survive than the people that are awake at night, right? That's what the theory of evolution would predict. Why would people who are asleep at night be more likely to survive? Forget the whole recharging your brain thing. There's another reason.
Light.
What about the light? There's no light at night much, right? So,
When you see light, the light affects the brain to do something. When the brain takes the light.
actually she's right. So there's this relationship, the circadian rhythm actually resets when it encounters light, which is a really good thing. But think about it. If you're in the dark, if we turn out all the lights right now, we got rid of the sun, we were like Mr. Burns in The Simpsons, and we blocked the dang thing.
Memory.
What are you going to do? So you need to go around, but there's no electricity. Are you going to be more or less likely to get injured? Are you going to be more or less likely to fall off of a cliff? Are you going to be more or less likely, by walking around in an environment that you're not suited for? Like cats can go around in the night because they have different eyes than we do, right? But we don't have those eyes. So it's a good thing that we are asleep at night because we don't encounter the dangers that we're not well equipped to deal with. So I agree with this whole need to recharge and stuff, but I don't think this is necessarily the only reason why the circadian rhythm would be a good thing.
But that's in the past. Now we have these kind of our lamps.
Yeah, so now, you're absolutely right. So now we have lamps and electricity, and we have cars with headlights, and we also have night vision goggles that we can use. So it's possible that now we don't need to like have this same 24-hour cycle, right? So if this is the case, then who should be more successful in the future? If people who are able to stay awake for longer and longer periods of time are more successful at gaining money and at having children and rearing their children, then over time we should lose this need to sleep. Right? That's what we could predict with an evolutionary perspective. Yeah.
Does that mean, like this evolutionary explanation, that our ancestors, first ancestors, they didn't sleep?
No, I mean, so evolution, okay, this is...
No, because natural selection, you say that the ones who sleep,
Yeah.
they don't encounter danger, so they don't die, right? So by natural selection, those
Exactly, but there's this, a part of the evolutionary puzzle is this variability. So some organisms are needing more sleep, some are needing less sleep, some might have a sleeping pattern where they're asleep at night, others might have a sleeping pattern where they're asleep more during the day, right?
Yeah.
And this idea is that based on these patterns, some of these things are going to be more likely to be beneficial for the animal. So if you guys have seen, I think they're called these Belgian blue cows. They look like cows that are on steroids. They're enormous. Have you guys seen these things? No? Google it, Belgian blue cows. Anyway, people have been breeding these cows for hundreds of years to try to select the most muscly cows because we eat the meat. People like the meat. So we have bred the ones that have more meat together again and again and again. So now we have these huge cows that are like tons and tons of meat compared to the ones that you would see out in nature. Right? So the idea is that you have people with different types of sleep cycles, and the people that are asleep during the day are less likely to maybe survive because they're tripping and injuring themselves at night. And also, the predators that are awake during the day can spot them easily and attack them. But this is sort of beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. I just wanted to mention it since you brought up the adaptive ability of the circadian rhythm. Okay, so this internal clock, it's actually a little bit longer than 24 hours, and as you said, it's reset by exposure to light. So if we want to see how long the circadian rhythm is, like, how do we know that it's a little longer than 24 hours? What type of study could we do to figure this out? They've done these things. So I say that there's a circadian rhythm, and it's an internal clock. It's longer than 24 hours, and it gets reset by light. How could we figure out if this is actually true? Forget about the reset by light part, but just how long it is.
Circa is, it doesn't have to be longer, it can be even less than 20.
Yeah, so circa is about, right?
Yeah.
So it could be less than 24 hours. But no, if you look, most people have a circadian rhythm that is longer than 24 hours. How do you know this? How do we know this? Pardon? You could do a sleep study. Yes, you do a sleep study. How? Give me more. You can do it actually without measuring brain waves at all. Isolation studies. What's an isolation study? You take one person, good, and what do you do with them?
Brain waves.
No, we don't need to worry about the brain waves.
Isolate from environment.
We isolate them from the environment. We isolate them from basically anything else, right? So we lock them in a room underground. This is what they've done it. They've locked people underground. And they're not like taking people and just saying, we're going to lock you under. They find volunteers, and they pay these people. So you lock them underground, you cut off their internet access so they don't know what time it is, but you give them magazines, and you give them DVDs, but you take away their clocks, you take away contact with other people, no jet telephone, you make sure that there's a fridge, but you don't have someone come down and restock it in their plain sight. You make sure that they don't know when people are giving them food. So what happens? You have no idea what time it is. A lot of times we say, oh, should I go to bed? Yeah, it's 11 o'clock, I'm going to go to bed. Or maybe 2 o'clock or 8 o'clock, depending on who you are. Anyway, so we use this information from our environment about whether or not we should sleep. But we take this away. So then the person has to decide for themselves when they're going to sleep. So when do they go to sleep? When they're tired. So we can look. Okay, so they went to sleep now. How long do they sleep? Okay, they're up again. How long does it take before they go back to sleep? All right, how long do they sleep? And we let them do this for a while, right? Because our circadian clocks get adapted. So some of you guys, if you get up at the same time every day with an alarm clock, if you forget to set the alarm clock, you might wake up anyway. Right? This is because your body has adjusted by continually resetting it with the alarm clocks. So anyway, after some time goes by, you get to see the sort of natural pattern that they fall in. And it's actually a little bit longer than 24 hours. So it's pretty neat. Beyond the circadian rhythm, which is this awake, asleep cycle, we have cycles within the sleep too. So we have these nocturnal rhythms. So here's the sleep cycle. What different stages do we have in sleep? 1, 2. We've got 1, 2, at least in the reading, I think I gave you 1, 2, and 3.
There's 4.
There are other people that say 4. I really don't like the whole 4-stage thing because I don't think that the distinction between what 3 is and 4 is really that clear. So I like the whole 3-stage cycle, although people can argue about this. But anyway, so if we look at the 3 stages and then REM is a separate stage. What do we see in these different stages? What would it be like if you were in stage 1 sleep and someone woke you up? How easy would it be? What things would you describe? It'd be very easy. Someone in stage 1 sleep, they could wake up really simply. And what might they tell you when you have wakened them up? Have any of you guys been on a trip and someone says like, oh hey, look at this? Or like, hey, wake up. And you're like, I'm not asleep. You know? My eyes are closed, but I'm just resting. I'm not asleep. Does that happen to you guys?
Yes.
That's like stage 1. You're actually very conscious, right? It's an altered state of consciousness, and you're not aware like you are during being awake, but you're aware to a great extent. Someone says, hey, Allah, did you see this? And you say, Oh yeah. It's very easy to wake someone up out of stage 1. How about stage 2?
Little bit harder.
It's a little bit harder. Okay, stage 3?
Deep
Stage 3 is deep sleep, and it's really, really hard to wake someone up from deep sleep. All right, REM, what's REM? Rapid eye movement. It's a stage that's in a very close to awareness stage where you are dreaming a lot and you make these rapid eye movements, right? So, how much sleep should people get? Less than 8 hours. It's about 8 hours, but less than. So 8 is probably too much. And this is interesting because most people, when they tell you like how much sleep you should get, they say you should get 8 hours of sleep a night. Now, of course, there is variability. This is a key ingredient of evolution. So different people need different amounts of sleep. So how can you figure out how much sleep that you need? Yeah, you have a question?
Yeah. This 8-hour thing or whatever, 7 hour, whatever, does it include the time when we like put our head on the pillow, or what is it? Like when does it start, this 8 hours?
So
Because we don't go to sleep like, right now, you know? Like when we put our head
that's
on
a
the pillow.
good point. So we don't go to sleep as soon as we hit the pillow. I would say it's not less than 8 hours, including the time that you put your head on the pillow, but it's less than 8 hours from the time that you first fall into stage 1 sleep.
And how long does it take?
To fall asleep? That's a good question. How long does it take? What is this known as? The length of time that it takes to fall asleep is known as... Yes! Whoever said sleep onset latency, you're exactly correct. So sleep onset latency is the time it takes you from putting your head on the pillow or from putting your head back in the car to the time you actually enter sleep, to the time you enter stage 1 sleep. So you can gauge how much sleep you need by how quickly you fall asleep, by the length of the sleep onset latency. So sometimes you guys might experience where you put your head on the pillow, but you can't fall asleep, and you can't fall asleep, and you can't fall asleep, and you're like, I have a test tomorrow, I need to fall asleep. If you have a long sleep onset latency, that means a long time before you actually fall asleep. That means that you're going to bed too early, or you're getting too much sleep. Right? If you are, actually not if you're getting too little. If you're getting way too little, you'll basically fall asleep right away. But if you're getting the right amount of sleep also, you'll be able to put down your head on the pillow and fall asleep very, very rapidly. So you can judge for yourself how much sleep you need to get by seeing how much time it takes you to fall asleep. If it's taking you a long time to fall asleep, stay up more. Don't sleep as long. This was like a huge problem I had when I was in college because it's hard to wake up, but it's easy to stay awake. So I'd stay up till 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning. We didn't have Facebook back then, but we had email and chat rooms and other things and talking with your friends. Right? So what would happen, I would get, I wasn't getting enough sleep. I had this really long sleep onset latency. If I didn't fall asleep quickly, I would stay up because I was used to going to sleep really late at night. I had reset my circadian rhythm so I would fall asleep at 3 or 4 in the morning. And then what would happen if I tried to go to bed early, I wouldn't be able to fall asleep. And why? It's because I had too much sleep relative to the amount of time when I needed to go to bed. Right?
Professor, if I take a nap, would this 7.5 hours would be included? Like 1 hour nap?
So, napping. I don't really want to talk about napping. One, because if a teacher doesn't really want to talk about it, it's probably because they don't know a heck of a lot about it. There's a lot of variability. And if you're not getting enough sleep during the night, you will be tired during the day. And a nap is a way for your body to get some of the sleep that you need. The problem with napping, especially in college, this is what I would do. I would go to sleep really, really late at night, and then I would try to wake up early, and then I'd be really exhausted, and then I would take a nap and be well rested during the evening, and I wouldn't be able to fall asleep that following night. So naps are really good. They can help you get some extra sleep when you are sleep deprived. But using a nap can also screw up the sort of normal circadian rhythm. Okay, so sleep deficit. This is when you're getting too little sleep, and this can create lots of problems. Sleep deficits can be cumulative. So if you get too little sleep one day, you might feel, not the best the next day. You get too little sleep the next day, and you're starting to feel bad. And you get too little sleep the next day, and you're feeling really bad, right? So this can be cumulative, and you need time to erase the effects of sleep deprivation. So occasionally during the school week, I have a lot of things I'm doing. I'm preparing for classes, I'm trying to write a grant, I'm working on a research project, and I have to do these things before deadlines. So during the week, sometimes I don't get a lot of sleep. And then on the weekend, I'll sleep like 12, 13. Last weekend, my wife, I went to bed at 8 o'clock. I woke up the next morning at like 12 o'clock. And I ate lunch. I went back to bed. I woke up at 7 o'clock. I ate dinner. I went back to bed. And I woke up the next morning at 6. I had gotten way, way, way too little sleep before that. I had a huge sleep deficit that I needed to pay back. Alright, so sleep effects, there's this quote, sleep deprivation is equivalent to blood alcohol level above the legal driving limit. So some of you guys think that you shouldn't drink alcohol because it makes you, it changes the state of consciousness, right? It alters your consciousness. So maybe some of you guys who think that, you might also want to get enough sleep so you don't experience the effects of alcohol without actually drinking it. This affects cognition, it affects mood, it affects safety and health. So if you're really, really tired, you're not going to do as well on a test. Remember when we talked about the Yerkes-Dodson law? And if you're really, really fatigued, your arousal is lower. It's going to make it harder for you to perform, harder to remember. It affects your mood. It's easy to tell. It's easy for my wife to tell when I need more sleep because I get a little bit more grumpy. What? Safety. When people haven't had enough sleep, their attention wanders, their alertness decreases, their reaction time drops. This is a big part of how it's like having a blood alcohol level over the legal limit in your health. Not having sleep is stressful, which increases cortisol, which decreases your immune system function, which increases the likelihood that you get sick, or increases the length of time that you're sick if you do happen to get sick. Okay, so sleep phenomena. Let's talk about nightmares. Nightmares and dreams. In which stage do nightmares and dreams occur? REM. Yeah. How easy is it to wake someone up from a dream or a nightmare?
Hard.
It depends on.
Think about where REM is.
Stage 1. So it's stage
Yeah, it's sort of right next to that, stage 1. So it's fairly easy to wake someone up when they're having a nightmare. Night terrors are something different. We'll get to that in a minute. Nocturnal emissions, what are these? Some people think that these are only for guys, but that's wrong. It happens for women too.
Wet dreams?
Wet dreams, yeah, people have wet dreams. This also happens during REM. How about night terrors? Yeah. Nocturnal emissions are wet dreams. It's when, so your body has this biological need to procreate. And when... I'm like debating, okay, what's appropriate for class versus what's appropriate for YouTube? Anyway, your body, it needs to...
Basically,
yeah, it's like ejaculation. And your body needs to do this to make sure that the system's working and everything's hunky-dory, so people have nocturnal emissions. And this often happens during REM, which is when you're dreaming. So if you have a sexy dream and you wake up a little bit wet, that's what happens. It's a nocturnal emission. And it happens for women too.
I think it's not necessarily that you have a sexy dream.
Yeah, not necessarily that you have a sexy dream, but this is embarrassing. Every time that I can remember a nocturnal mission, it was a sexy dream. Okay, night terrors, what are these? They're like nightmares, but they're different. What stage are they in? They're in 3 or 4 if you like the whole 4 thing. They're in deep, deep sleep. And in deep, deep sleep, it's really hard to wake someone up. So when someone is having a night terror, it can be really hard to wake them up. And night terrors are really, really bad. Nightmares are bad. I don't like nightmares, but night terrors are worse. What's the difference between like a nightmare and a night terror? Yeah, with a night terror, it's just like this overwhelming sense of dread, and it's not connected to things. So if you have a nightmare, often it's about particular things, like, oh, there's a person chasing me. With the night terror, like you can't say like this happens or that. It's just like this horrible, horrible, horrible feeling, and it might be more than just a feeling. There might be like colors or sounds, but it's not like a dream where you've got this sort of episode to go with it. Yeah.
Sometimes you want to wake up from a dream. Is it at this stage?
It could be in the night terrors or in the nightmares. Probably more often it's going to be in the nightmare stage that you want to wake up from your dream, because in the nightmare stage you're more aware. Right? So in the night terror stage you're in a much deeper sleep, and it's going to be much harder not only to be aware but for someone to wake you up. Sleepwalking also happens during deep sleep. It can be dangerous to wake someone up in deep sleep because since it's so deep, such an altered state of consciousness, they have very little awareness about what's going on, even though they're aware enough to navigate the environment. If you wake someone up while they're out and about, they can completely freak out. Whoa, why am I here? What's going on? So if you see someone who's night walking or sleepwalking, try to get them back to their bed. Put them back, and it'll be much better than waking them up. Okay, so insomnia is a difficulty falling asleep. What are some of the causes of insomnia? Stress. Noise. Light. Sadness. Depression. Anything else? Coffee! Yeah, there are lots of causes. So drinking coffee or cola turca right before you go to bed, not a good idea. Actually, exercising right before you go to bed, this is not a good idea as well. Think about the stimulants in exercise. These are things that affect your sympathetic nervous system. And when you're trying to fall asleep, you want your parasympathetic nervous system to help you get to sleep. So you want to avoid overstimulating yourself. Variability in bedtime. Going to sleep at different times on different days. Taking naps can make it more difficult to fall asleep. Now think about it. People, like, if you're taking a nap, does that mean you're an insomniac? I mean, you had no problem falling asleep during the day, but you had a problem falling asleep then that night. Psychological issues like stress, disorder, depression. How can you treat this? You can avoid stimulants. You can skip the cola turca and drink some like chamomile chai or something. Yeah, drink some milk, or even better, drink some warm milk, which has tryptophan, which will make you more drowsy. You can change your environment. So some things, like if it's noisy, you might not be able to go someplace else and sleep, but you can buy earplugs. So I am not addicted in the real sense of addiction, but I use earplugs every night when I sleep. And if I don't have earplugs, I have a hard time falling asleep. This all started with my second child, because he would wake up during the night and I needed to like be alert so I could do well when I was teaching the next day. So I started using earplugs. So I changed my environment. You can reduce the variability, eliminate naps, try to go to sleep at the same time each day. And if you have some psychological issues, you can try to seek help. How about narcolepsy?
Always yours.
Yeah, with people suffering from narcolepsy, it's excessive sleepiness. In fact, some of these people will suffer from sleep attacks. Well, they'll just be walking and talking, then all. Well, they'll they might not even be aware that they fall asleep. You Google this, you can see some cute narcoleptic dogs like passing out. Anyway, with narcolepsy, there's this genetic component. There's this chemical called hypocretin, which is a natural stimulant that you have throughout the day that keeps you awake. And if you're not producing this natural stimulant, you're going to feel more tired, more sleepy. This can be made worse by conditions that promote insomnia. So, how do you treat narcolepsy? You can use medication. Stimulants. Now, stimulants can make, insomnia worse, but when does it make insomnia worse? It makes insomnia worse when you have stimulants right before bed. So if you're suffering from narcolepsy by taking cola turca or a cigarette, although there are some bad health risks associated with that, but the nicotine's a stimulant that'll help keep you awake during the day. You can also change your lifestyle. Plan naps. By getting some naps, if you're narcoleptic during the day, you can reduce the likelihood that you're going to have a spontaneous nap. Does that make sense? And also eat light. Some of you may have noticed if you eat a lot, you feel fatigued afterwards, especially if you eat certain types of food. Carbohydrates like rice, potatoes, breads. So you can be aware of these things and change your diet to decrease the likelihood that you'll be excessively sleepy during the day. Chronic fatigue syndrome is sort of the opposite. This is, you're always tired. I'm sorry, it's not the opposite. I was thinking of something else. It's excessive sleepiness. It doesn't go away after rest, but you don't have this involuntary sort of sleeping fits. The causes are uncertain. We don't really know why this is. It looks like there are some stress components. It looks like there are some genetic components, some environmental components, but science hasn't really figured this one out yet. They have used a variety of treatments that have shown some success. The second one, this graded exercise theory, it's like getting a little bit of exercise and then ramping it up slowly over time. And this has actually made chronic fatigue syndrome worse in some situations.
What is pacing?
Pacing is basically pacing the day. So if you have a job and you have chronic fatigue syndrome, you need to get the stuff done, right, in order to keep your job. So what do? You set the most important tasks up for when you're going to be most awake and most alert. So if you don't have this, you might be able to do hard tasks at any time of the day. But if you have this, it might be better to schedule those things for when you're most awake. And pacing is actually good regardless of whether or not you have chronic fatigue syndrome. But it's more important if you do. You can use classical conditioning to get better sleep. You can go to the bed at the same time each day, so that time of day actually becomes a conditioned stimulus that will make you tired. Aha, it's this time, I'm tired now. Same thing, wake up at the same time each day. And then even without using an alarm clock, you'll wake up that time because that time becomes like a conditioned stimulus. Don't use your bed when you're not sleeping. Don't study in your bed. Don't, play cards in your bed. Don't talk to your friends on the phone in your bed. Use your bed for sleeping. So that way it becomes conditioned. So when you get into bed, there's this association between the bed and sleep, and you feel more tired. Similarly, don't use the bedroom when not sleeping. This is virtually impossible for college students because the dorms are your bedrooms, and that's where you do everything. So you can do this one later. And have a sleeping ritual. Do something every night before you go to bed. Brush your teeth, sing your favorite song, do something to, trigger your body into thinking, aha, I brushed my teeth. Time to go to sleep now. Adjust your environment. You have a non-arousing bedtime where it's dark and quiet. You have an arousing awakening. Use a bright light in the morning if you can, especially during the winter where there's not a lot of light outside. Use a loud alarm. Other sleep tips, get exercise during the day, not before you go to sleep. Don't eat a big meal, don't take stimulants, don't take basically drugs right before you go to sleep. And if you can't fall asleep quickly, get out of bed. Don't stay in bed because you want that association between bed and sleep to be strong. So get out of bed and do something else until you feel like you can go to sleep. And big for students, distribute your study. Don't procrastinate. My biggest problem with getting sleep, aside from talking with my friends, was studying for exams. Because I would not spend a lot of time during the week studying. I would wait until an exam, and then I would study, 12 hours all night long and not get any sleep. And that really screws up your circadian rhythm. So if you don't procrastinate, it can eliminate this. Our next class, we're going to be in the conference hall again. It's going to be a little different class. I am not going to lecture much. We're going to watch a video on hypnosis that I really, really like. So, see you on Friday.